Welcome everyone to another episode of the Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. Joining me this week, as always, are my old timer compadres. We have the Professor and the 30th Crusader. Gents, how's it going?
It's going very, very well, Johnny. How are you?
Muy bien.
Muy bien. Mal.
Well done, machine. Well done.
Woohoo! I'm not going to. You know what? I don't know if I'm going. I'm supposed to go to Mexico this year. Not sure if it's going to happen.
I don't think so either.
Oh, thanks, man. Cheers.
Yeah.
I was stopping off. I was going to stop off at New York, but if you're going to be like that, that was it. Fine. Stuff you.
I'd take the drive to New York to see the old machine.
Oh, bless you, cotton socks.
Then I had to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yeah, funny enough, we were going to New York for the weekend, and I got the note saying you have to quarantine for 14 days. I was like, we'll see how that goes. So we're keeping our fingers on the pulse and see what happens. All right, talking about fingers on pulses, we are talking about 3 books. We decided between us that we were going to go B teams. We're B teams this week. All right, with the Philadelphia Eagles inspiring us after playing their second stringers, so to ensure that the Giants didn't win the NFC least.
You had to throw that out there.
I did. We decided to go B team fantastic. So we have got 3 classic B teams, potentially how you would look at them. I'm not sure I agree with this, but hey ho. First up, we have the Professor's Choice. And the Professor, yes, stereotypically, the Professor does go Marvel.
Of course. So, I mean, what better B team can you find than the Avengers B team, the West Coast Avengers?
Exactly.
Right?
So, West Coast Avengers Volume 2. Yes, Volume 2. There was a mini-series out beforehand, so all you correctonados who say, what? Go check that out. So this is number 4 from January 1986. Now, I've done my usual scurrying around the old Tinterweb, and you know what? I cannot find this as a single issue. I spent at least I spent at least 5 minutes looking. Couldn't find it.
It's sold out everywhere. It's rare. It's super rare. Very difficult. I understand it sold for more than the Batman #1 that sold this week for $2 million for 9.4.
Well, you can say that, but what I did find was issues 1 through 4 for Volume 2 for 25 quid. So
it was a special offer for that one. What was the condition? What was the condition?
It was near mint. Still in its little comic book baggie. There it was. All right. Okay, so this is written by a guy you guys know pretty well, Steve Englehart.
Oh yes.
Got breakdowns by Al Milgrom, which means he probably had a breakdown working for Marvel back in the 80s. I don't know. Maybe. You never know. Finishes by the classic Joe Sinnott. Letters by Janice Chiang. And colors by, I'm sure you picked this book just to screw me up with the name. I'm going with Ken Fenwick. That's what I'm going with. If it's wrong, it's bound to be wrong. So there you go.
It won't be the first time.
It definitely won't be the last either. It is me after all. So there you go.
So
West Coast Avengers. That's the one. Ta-da.
So I'm going to do my impression of me when I was talking to Steve Englehart a few years ago, and I had to tell him, Steve, I have to tell you, you are the creator of my all-time favorite villain in Marvel, Master Pandemonium. And I'm going to do an impression of Steve's face as I said that. It was kind of like this. Well, I guess somebody has to have him for a favorite character. And I was like, but, so, I mean, when we were talking B teams, I wanted to pick the first appearance of Master Pandemonium, which is issue 4 of West Coast Avengers, because first of all, he's my favorite villain in Marvel, and even though he's only appeared sporadically since his first appearance, he figured very heavily in the West Coast Avengers the first year of the storyline. He was their main villain, and he figured into a storyline with Tigra, and then later on, when John Byrne took over the book, John Byrne brought Master Pandemonium back and basically broke Scarlet Witch, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times has that happened?
This is the first time that. Well, actually,
okay.
the last time when she was possessed by Chthon, John Byrne had a hand in that as well, back in the 70s.
Either he doesn't like witches or he doesn't like the color red. So
it's true. So going back and rereading this book because I really wanted to, I love the fact that even though this is the B team, they really have a lot of the heavy hitters. So we got Wonder Man, we have the newly come back Tony Stark as Iron Man in the Silver Centurion armor from the late 80s or mid 80s, if everybody might remember that. I think there's some people on this podcast, I think, that maybe that red and silver is their favorite armor, right?
it's my favorite armor.
All right.
Guilty as charged.
I was watching Iron Man 2
Yeah.
the other night, and when the racetrack, he brings on the red and the silver. I said to my wife, I was like, "Yeah, this is my favorite armor, therefore."
Yeah. So that to me, just the 80s feel of this book is just great, because you have Hawkeye, who I think arguably this is the best version of a Hawkeye I think we've gotten. I think Matt Fraction broke him years ago and turned him into a bumbling idiot, and he's not a bumbling idiot in this. He's just an arrogant kind of jerk, and you can kind of still see that in this version where you right in the page you have where he's trying to talk the Thing into joining the West Coast Avengers, and he's like he's literally Jim Carrey, Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance, and I just love those pages because he's like, oh man, he just wants to be coaxed. He just wants a little, he wants to be treated like the star he is, and I loved it. Some of the things in this book why you should go out and find Englehart's run of West Coast Avengers is you're getting more story for your money in this book than any comic you're getting out on the stands today. Every single page is driving plot. There's several different subplots in here. Every single Avenger, there's nobody here that's window dressing, with the exception of maybe of Tony Stark, because he's got his own book. But you have Wonder Man, who he's just admitted that that he embezzled money, and that he's trying to get his Hollywood career back off the ground. So you're kind of getting that angst from him. They kind of now Firebird, who appears in this. This is her second appearance. She's appeared in previously in one issue of the Hulk, but she comes along with she was a member of the Rangers. So that they're going to come back later on. Firebird's actually the first official recruit of West Coast Avengers. It's not the Thing. You think spoilers. The Thing hangs around for about 10 issues or so, but he never ends up joining. But he is a honorary member of the West Coast Avengers. You got Hawkeye and Mockingbird, who had just recently been married and are trying to run this team. You have Tigra, who you see in the very next issue, they get into more of Tigra's origins and really kind of revamp her a little bit. But here you get her kind of giving into her cat-like nature, where she had kind of forced herself on Hank Pym, but here she is kind of cozying up to Wonder Man very quickly, and Wonder Man's not saying no. So,
well, why would you? She's a cat and she's in a bikini. What more do you need? He puts fishnets on her, and it's a done deal.
She was she's a little sex pot that, even if you look in the 70s, she was having some solo stories in the Vampire Tales black and white magazine, not Vampire Tales, Chillers, whatever, Creatures on the Loose or whatever it was. But they drew her very erotically for the 70s. They really kind of were going for it. But here, Master Pandemonium, this is his first appearance. I love this character, and they kind of introduced just a little bit of mystery in this first issue, because they don't get into his origin until a couple of issues down the road. But here he's just, you don't really know what he's up to, and then like all his arms and his legs are demons, and they detach from his body, and then he can open up his chest and basically open a portal to hell, and all these demons come out of him. And then he's got hellfire, like a fire weapon breath. That's kind of reminds me of Ghost Rider's Hellfire. And it's just very interesting, and the way they Steve wrote him, especially in the last page with the mystery of who his bird. I think his bird's name is Asmodeus.
Let me get there. There you go.
But it's, if you kind of look at that cute little thing that the bird's actually smoking a cigar, and so that this is deeper. There's a story to this guy, and his first appearance really was like, oh man, I want to read more about him. And this is the B team. Now, if you have to remember, and Steve will be the first one to tell you that the West Coast Avengers was selling better than the regular book.
Mm.
And he was using all the I guess you want to call them substitute Avengers, but I think the Avengers has such a wider range of characters that they can pick from. I'm kind of happy that they went with a lineup of everybody that had been Avengers before, and they didn't try to recruit anybody until the 4th issue. And they even say on the first page, Captain America was recruited in issue 4, and here, and of course they make you think they're going to recruit the Thing, But anyway, I'm interested in what you guys think about this. I know there was a lot, but the subplots you have in here are built up for future storylines that really kind of kept me engaged through at least the first year and a half of the title, with Ultron coming back in the first couple of issues, but then he comes back as a good guy because his programming. How he kept evolving himself, Ultron 3, Ultron 4. Once he gets to version 12, he gets rid of his hatred for humanity, and he wants to form a relationship with his dad, Hank. And
yeah, that sounds a little bit too much like Brainiac to me. That's some Brainiac stuff going on.
Well, with the next version, the one after 12, obviously.
So there was.
I think they missed that out because it was unlucky. It went 12-14.
There's a lot going on in that issue that's building up future storyline that you don't see in comics anymore. You do not see the level of subplots.
That's one of the vibes I got from this, is that everybody has something. Everyone has some panel time, which is
nobody's there for window dressing.
Yeah, with the exception of Iron Man. And it's a good thing you said Tony Stark, because I was looking through this and I'm kind of like, I wasn't sure, because around this time he got
Rhodey
for a while. Yeah, Rhodey was in the armor for a bit. So
but Rhodey was never in the red and silver armor.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. 13th. Are you a West Coast Avengers fan? Are you more East Titans East?
God, I actually favor the West Coast Avengers more, to be honest. I do have over a lot of other books, to be honest. So West Coast Avengers, particularly with this issue, it's a lot like you guys have been alluding. There's a lot happening. We all know how the story turns out in this day and age, hopefully. But in this 4th issue, what stands out right away, Steve Englehart is to no surprise someone who's handled the Avengers well. Period. Has worked with DC, but you put him on this book, he knows what he's doing. And Al Milgrom, I loved his work on Thor. Mm-hmm. So when you start, Joe Sinnott is a legend. So this is a good creative group working on this book. So with West Coast Avengers, love the art, love the coloring. It brings me back to that era of time when they're just like with any B team book, it's an experiment, right?
Yep. Definitely, that's a good shout.
They're like, okay, let's get some former Avengers. But Hawkeye was no slouch Avenger. He was there for quite a bit of time. But here we are. So who are we going to have leading this group? But to make it more interesting and appealing, you have Hank Pym and Iron Man in there, the original founding members of the team. Mm-hmm. And then you see who else you can throw in here into this mix.
Yep.
But with this particular issue, none of these characters are brand new, with the exception of Master Pandemonium. Firebrand wasn't really well known yet. I thought it was a good touch of, going into Marvel history with looking into characters that were originated from the western coast of the U.S. or western U.S.
That's awesome.
So throwing in the Rangers, they weren't brand new. They just weren't that well known. So they just plucked Firebird out of that. So that was good. And she's always been a good character in this run, as you'll see later on for those of you who have yet to read West Coast Avengers in its entirety. But yeah, again, a lot of subplotting here. Master Pandemonium is exactly that. It is pandemonium for him. When this guy first came out, I remember buying this off the newsstand. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? I'm like, oh, it is. That's what's happening. It is hell. All hell is breaking loose, literally. He is he's just one of those characters where you're speechless because you really can't find the right adjective for him. But he was instrumental later on in the run. There's no doubt about that. And as an enemy that commanded the focus of the West Coast Avengers. One thing that I did like with this was the way you're starting to see the subplot of Ultron. And Ultron was obviously very bad news for Hank Pym. Here he is like, okay, look, I really don't want to be doing this. I really don't want to be here, but you guys talk me into it. Then later on, he feels so good about being part of the team. Like, this is great. I'm start a new lease on life, right? Everything just went to shit with the Wasp and all that. All that's behind him. The Yellow Jacket, everything. Here he is, issue 4. He gets a call from Ultron. And that panel right there says it all on his reaction. It's like, I just can't get a break.
Yep. Even if the TARDIS is behind him.
Correct. And the same for these, well, even for these other characters, right?
Like there. TARDIS is there.
Like Tigra has some back history. Mockingbird has some back history. Remember, she wasn't necessarily that well received. Your former SHIELD agent. Same for Hawkeye, was a criminal. So like, look who you're putting together. Like Tony Stark, love him or hate him, here he is. And then Hawkeye's personality. I think that this was very well thought for an experiment, and to prove that, this run lasted quite a while with this idea. To me, it's one of the more successful B team books out there. Those are my thoughts on that.
I think it makes some great points. Recently, we've had a ton of characters show up in certain books. Bad guys who have been on the good guys team, like Darkseid on the Justice League team, or Clayface on the Detective Comics type team. But those aren't new ideas. West Coast Avengers, you look at it, they've got Tigra, villain, Hawkeye, villain, Wonder Man, villain. At some point, they've kind of gone back and they've kind of shown how these characters can be brought back into the fold, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, and even remember, we're not that far removed from Tony Stark's fall from grace with his alcoholic problems, and he had just recently got back in the armor. So, I mean, this was very much a proving ground for Tony too.
It's all about retribution in the book. It's all about having that second chance. I enjoyed the book. It has that 80s feel to it that you'd expect. It has a lot of fun. There's a lot of dialogue, so you're not going to breeze through this book in any shape, way, or form. I love Tigra. I thought she was class. However, a couple of things. Wonder Man. I always loved Wonder Man, even when he was in his, that really big red heavy jacket he used to wear.
The safari jacket. That's my favorite costume.
Yeah, I was like, that's. But because over here we've got Marvel Comics so few and far between, I never got to know who he was. So he has ionic powers. What's that mean? I was like, it just doesn't.
They don't even know. Just go with it.
Yeah.
So you were wondering about Wonder Man. I think it's fitting. Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Unlike his jacket.
Wonderful.
But unfortunately, when it comes to Hawkeye and Mockingbird, you know what I'm going to say. All I see is Green Arrow and Black Canary, and Canary's got fishnets. So, soz. But when you go back and read this, you can see how the two totally distinct characters. Green Arrow at the time was all liberal. He was all kind of making his stance against the man and stuff. Well, Hawkeye's a completely different character. He's all about arrogance and cocksure. He's all that stuff going on. So I think I probably did the characters a misservice massively. So, and plus Mockingbird's turned out to be a really good character over the last 5 years or so. So I've really enjoyed her. But that's not for this show. That's for the New Timers comic book show.
I think Hawkeye had more growth. Just if you look from his beginnings to when he became the leader of the West Coast Avengers, there was a journey that he had to go through to become able to lead a group. And here is when you actually kind of see everything paying off, and you could see how much like he pays to Captain America, like how much respect, and because Captain America is running the other team, and
that's a great point, because when Captain America gets shot, they look at Hawkeye to replace him, and anyone who's new to the comics around that time will think, Hawkeye, what? He's just a dude with a bow and arrow. You forget that he has been a leader of an Avengers team for so long.
Yeah.
So, he's paid his dues. No, a good choice. Good choice. It was great seeing some of these characters. The whole Tigra thing. Yeah, I'm cool with Kat.
She's never done anything better than her run on West Coast Avengers.
Yeah,
she's largely forgotten character afterwards. Except they did have her get raped in some Avengers invasion or something.
Okay.
Something.
All right. Okay, so hope she got revenge of whomever it was. So invasion.
It's forgettable.
Okay. All right. Now to the next book. Then we are going with the 13th choice. 13th Crusader. 13th has gone back to his DC roots for this one. We're going back to March 1984, Infinity Inc. #1. Looked on the old Tinterweb for at least 2 minutes for this. Found one in Germany for £3 whole English. There you go. I can buy a near mint copy, allegedly, at $9.99. So they're still holding up. Written by Roy Thomas, art by Jerry Ordway, inks by Mike Macklin, co-plot credits for Dan Thomas, colors by Anthony Tolin, and letters by DC's version of the time, Clayton Cowles, but it is actually John Costanza, who was lettering all sorts of books all over the place at the time. So there you go. 13th. This is your choice, the Infinity Inc. What tell us about this, please?
Well, where do we start? So, in terms of price and availability, these books and the run in general are not that hard to find. In fact, you could probably buy one and get the run free. That's my bad joke. But why go with this book, right? So you gotta, when it comes to B teams in DC, not that easy to kind of say who is a solid B team. So the original team, the Justice Society of America, you look at them and they're like, okay, they're the ones that pretty much laid the foundation for superhero teams, especially in DC and in comics in general. But then you have Infinity Inc., and they're straight out of the lore of the Justice Society of America. And, in this point in time, there was no Crisis on Infinite Earths yet, which was good. So before I really delve into Infinity Inc., for anybody out there who digs the JSA, I heavily recommend that you read All-Star Squadron, the run in its entirety, to get a really good feel. It's also written by Roy Thomas. So here we are with kind of a spin-off, if you will, handled by Roy Thomas. Who better? After all those issues in All-Star Squadron, here it is, Infinity Inc. Let's try this. Jerry Ordway, phenomenal artist, gets to draw this book. And right off the bat, you have a very good creative team with this idea. So what is the idea? The idea is, and it's funny, in the first few pages, it's like, hey, we just fought, our nemesis, or however you want to call it in plural, and we have to get ready, but we're short-handed. Right away, when you look at that panel that the machine has there, you're short-handed. Look how many of you are there. Yeah, so I think that's funny, like how they open up with that plot, but nonetheless, it's a society was not just a large group of heroes, but they were a family. You know, they've been through it all for ages, and you know, stemming from the golden age of DC, instrumental in DC's World War II era, and you'll get a lot of that in All-Star Squadron. But here we are. You need a starting point for this new team, and then lo and behold, they literally just barge on in. Right? They made themselves known to the Society of America. Exactly. Took the word out of my mouth.
I'm here to help. That's what I'm saying. I'm here to help.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. They just literally show up and crash the party. So, but then you're wondering, like, who are you guys? Right? So, who they are literally children or godchildren of Justice Society of America members. And in true DC fashion, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'll punch you in the mouth. That's my answer. So right away they get into a brawl, and I thought it was funny. But this era of DC, it kind of like, it's great art. I love the coloring, very very colorful books, but the story kind of drags a little bit. This is how they're getting to know each other. It's so that you get several pages of action. It's like, hey, I just stop. I want to talk to you. Yeah. Okay, while you're telling me, yeah, I want to talk to you too. I'm trying to punch you in the mouth. So I thought that was kind of funny. But then things finally calm down. They say, here's who I am and what have you. So you have the Silver Scarab, who is the son. And again, remember, this is pre-crisis. I want to emphasize that, right? Dealing with Golden Age, Earth 1. So Silver Scarab is the son of Hawkman and Hawkgirl. And here he is. Then you have Nuklon, who is the godson of the original Atom. Then you have the Fury, who is Lita Trevor, the daughter of the Golden Age Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. Then you have Northwind, who is a hybrid of a species of bird people and a friend of Hawkman.
I think this needs to be on Jerry Springer.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry.
And it gets better. It gets better. So the threat still remains, right? You don't see that large threat. It's just a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of who's who in a debut issue.
Yeah.
So, but for most people back then, they had no idea who these guys were. Never mind some of the JSA members, because to the average DC reader, or someone who wasn't really like that knowledgeable of what happened in Earth 1, you're gonna think like, whoa, how did Robin age? What happened to Green Lantern? That's not the Green Lantern I know. Yeah. Hawkman, you know, where's his helmet? But this is Earth 1, so the original DC universe, if you will. But
this is not Earth 2.
Huh?
This is Earth 2, isn't it? Not Earth 1.
Yeah, Earth 2. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so this is what's happening here, and you know, these kids, they want to join the JSA, you know, because that's the team, that's the where they feel like they belong. But ultimately, you know, they're rejected, and they don't make the team. But what this book does really well is it kind of explains to you, it introduces these characters to you in this book, and it gives you like their brief background, and you can see the history, the progression of not just these characters, but where they come from, their families. So it gives you a really good, solid timeline for these families. And then I guess the real big thing towards the end of the book, you get Jade and Obsidian, the son and daughter of the original Green Lantern, with Alan Scott. Jade is one of my favorite lanterns, period. And this is pretty much where they're saying to, you know, Alan Scott, hey, we're your kids. That's the Jerry Springer moment. He's like, what?
I like that panel that I'm showing there right at the bottom. He's like, my kids? Really? I seem to remember something years ago. Yeah, dude, that's called sex.
Yeah. Wait a minute. How'd that happen? You know.
Well, when a man and a woman love each other very, very much, they have a special kiss.
Yeah, exactly. You know. And it's like, my ring is magical, but what
I'm
happened?
sure it is, but that's not how you get kids.
This is not your new 52, Alan Scott.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this book, again, you know, for the purpose of what we're talking about today, would be, you look at really good teams, like what we were saying earlier about Avengers. I mean, that is like a foundation for Marvel when it comes to teams, obviously, other than Fantastic Four and X-Men. But now on the DC side, what two teams come up to your mind all the time? Justice League and Justice Society.
Yeah.
How do you get a B team out of that? So for Justice League, they've gone through several spin-off teams and what have you, but some semi-successful, some not so successful. But here you are, the original team. Like, this was the standard. This was the mold from which all other teams kind of evolved from. But here you get a spin-off of that. And I think if it wasn't for Infinity Inc., years later with the newer JSA run, right, it would have been a different ballgame, because like in Nuklon's case, he became a different hero in Atom Smasher, and that took off. Silver Scarab obviously evolved into something else. Jade was not only prominent throughout DC later on, but she was also a girlfriend of the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern in that run. So Obsidian went nuts. So, there's a lot of literally. So there's a lot that has happened that stems from these characters, and I think this is where you start.
It's funny because you mentioned this book, and when I think of Infinity Inc., I also think of the Justice Society All Stars book.
Yeah.
When that came out, it was very much a let's teach the kids how to be heroes. Well, that's this book. That's this book exactly.
Right.
I agree with you. This is wordy. This is wordy McWordy. There is lots of, get out your reading glasses, dudes, and do that. You're going to need it.
Yeah,
But
and I want to throw something out here too, right? Let's not forget that in this issue too, you could see some, I don't want to say dissension within the JSA, but more of like, look, I think you were wrong, because they held a vote, right? And it was down the middle, but Hawkman decided, look, we're not going to let them join. But they already had gathered some attention worthy enough for like Power Girl and the Huntress to say, look, you know what? I'm going with them. This is the Helena Wayne Huntress and Power Girl, kind of like that world's world's finest.
definitely.
And so adding those two to the roster, and obviously down the line with this run, was a big deal. And I think, unfortunately, the Crisis on Infinite Earths did an injustice for this group in a way, because a lot of the history's changed.
Definitely.
So
some of the key components are absolutely still there. Obsidian, of course, and Jade, and the renaming of certain characters. But you're absolutely right. It does tell back to this book. Roy Thomas, DC stalwart, wrote loads of good DC stuff which delves into the backstory of the DC universe. But of course, he used to do it for Marvel as well. Roy Thomas is one of these guys that just loves comic books. I don't think he's particular. I've never met the guy, and I think if you probably cut him in half, he's probably 51% Marvel, 49% DC, to be fair. But it's a close thing for the level of stuff that he's done. I mean, he brought Star Wars to Marvel, so Professor Infinity Inc., what do you think? Now, you're quite you think 80s DC sometimes read older, don't you?
No, 70s DC's reads younger. So I do have, I think something to add. But as far as when we're talking about B teams, it's very difficult to, like you said, to find a B team in DC, because you can look at Marvel and come on, West Coast Avengers was easy. We're going to talk about Champions in a minute, and they don't get any B-ier than the Champions. All right?
They're a C team. Thank you very much.
Literally.
Yeah, and I think when we were coming up with ideas for teams in DC for like a B team, the only true B team that I can really think of is like the Legion of Substitute Heroes, where they were just a team of guys that didn't get into the Legion, you know. But when we're talking about, I mean, Infinity Inc., it says it right on the cover. All-Star Squadron was the past, Justice Society is the present, Infinity Inc. is the future, right? So it's not really a B team; it's more than a continuation of what's come before. When you look at Teen Titans, I would think Teen Titans might be a B team, but not really, right? Because they're like the Junior Justice League, right? So they're not really a B team. But you know, it was tough, but Infinity Inc. And just kind of unpacking this, because I read Infinity Inc. back in 1984 when it first came out, and it was one of the first books that I ever kind of cut my teeth on DC, and it was very super confusing to me because I didn't really know Earth 1, Earth 2. I didn't know Golden Age Flash from Barry Allen from Wally West. No idea. And it was intimidating, and it was almost to the point where, and you even just showed that first page with all the Justice Society members on at the table with these new people coming through the door. I didn't know who people were sitting around the table were, let alone the people coming through the door. So when 13 was saying like very difficult, you know, to separate Golden Age Hawkman from the current Hawkman, I had no idea, and it was really intimidating me to read this. But looking back on it, because this is the first time I've reread this book since 1984. Roy Thomas is, I mean, I don't know if you could say he loves Marvel or DC more. I think he loves continuity more.
Yeah.
Right. He loves the stuff that came before, and he loves to invent stuff that fits with the stuff that came before.
That's exactly what you will get with All-Star Squadron, and that totally supports what you just said, and is no different with this, with Infinity Inc.
Right. So, so I did, when we're going through it, and it is very wordy, but so Roy always is, but this book needed to be wordy to kind of explain where everybody was coming from, their origin stories. The one thing, Northwind's origin story was really, really a little creepy, because you have the black dude meet the bird woman, and then they're hatching their son, and you had actually show him coming out of the egg at page 18. I'm like, if I was that black dude, I'd be running the other way.
Hey, it's all Mork and Mindy. It's all Mork and Mindy. That's all
okay, but so okay, so maybe Mirth came from Mork and Mindy before this book, and it made it okay. But yeah, I don't know. But I did enjoy this book, and it actually, when I got to the end of the first issue, I was like, man, do I have time to read issue 2? Which to me, that's something, right? So like I wanted to jump into issue 2 and continue. So so good shout. I loved Infinity Inc. And one other thing I wanted to point out was Infinity Inc. was one of the first books, along with the New Teen Titans, that was printed on heavy stock color paper back in 1984. It was when they started making that jump from newsprint, and this was the first book from DC.
Is that Baxter paper, if I recall? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Yeah.
But it allowed the colors to bleed out to the edge of the pages, and allowed to be for a wider array of color palette. So to me, I mean, and of course we get that every day now that you're reading books today. But this was a huge jump in technology back in '84.
Yeah, and it certainly fit Jerry Ordway's art style, which is phenomenal.
Yes.
I mean, I love his work mostly on The Power of Shazam, which is another phenomenal run.
Yep.
But yeah, in this book it really works. I want to throw one other thing out there. The cover of this book, the background is actually the cover to All-Star Comics 3, the first appearance of the Justice Society of America. So, but again, as a little kid in that era, it's like, okay, I've seen this image, but I have no idea what it is. Now that I'm, we're all older, we're like, oh, wait a minute. Now it makes sense.
Of course. There you go.
All right.
Okay. 2 down, 1 to go. Whew. It's been a bit of a show. So we're going to take a bit of a breather, take a bit of a break. Whilst we do that, here is one of our ads for one of our other shows. This is Crisis in the Toyverse. Have a listen to this. It'll blow your socks off, and see how things go from there, okay? There you go, Crisis and Toyverse. That advert is awesome.
It makes me want to go watch it right now. Can we take a break?
No, you can't.
Oh,
No, you can't.
I love that ad. I could watch that ad 2 or 3, 4 times.
Really?
Really, it's really good. It's really good.
It's a really good advert. I was on OTP outside the panels yesterday talking to some guys about an indie book. We ran the advert, and after the advert came on, they were like, "That's better than what we're doing." I was like, "Yeah, thanks, guys. Cheers, appreciate that." For those who want to see that live, the OTP episode is coming out. It'll be out now. In fact, by the time you're hearing this, it'll be the one for it's a book called, I'm sorry for the swear words, Space Bastards, but that's what it's called.
Damn you.
Sorry. All right. We took a quick break. We'll close off Infinity Inc. I think I said it earlier, Infinity Inc. is one of those books that kind of starts a trend, and I agree with the 13th that it is absolutely an injustice that so many of those characters got cut short in Crisis. I understand why Crisis happened, of course I do, but it caused more problems than it solved. You know, how many times was Power Girl's origin being changed? You know, and after that, it was like Hippolyta was in the Justice Society, not Diana, and it just got all crazy and stuff. I like Jade. I think Jade's canny. I prefer Obsidian because I think he adds a little bit more depth and texture to like the superhero world. You got to think Obsidian's a character that I suppose is better off after the Dark Knight Returns and how the DC universe goes a little bit darker.
Yeah.
Up to that point, everything's like, "Ooh, look at this! Everything's happy, everyone's lovely, everything's whatever." And then Dark Knight Returns comes out, and boom, everyone's all dark and grumpy. So, and Obsidian has his mental health issue at that point, or shortly thereafter. So I think he suits that very well. It's just, I don't know, reading some of the dialogue, it is of its time, which a lot of these books are. So it's long-winded. I could have done without the 4 different origin stories all try to cramp down in one book. I would be like, you know what, I would like to see that most probably spaced out. But what am I saying? And if this was a modern day book, heroes wouldn't just barge in. There'd be a 6-issue miniseries of the heroes before they barged into the headquarters. So,
and over how many volumes?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Crossover over how many issues?
It would be an event. It would be an event book.
Yeah.
No, it would really live up to its name and to infinity and beyond. So
just imagine it's like, yeah, the event is someone's knocking at your door.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. All right. Right. So last up is my choice. We mentioned it before. The cat is out of the bag. We are going with, I'm going to say, and I'm going to be generous. This is an absolute mutt of a book. This is the Champions.
It is a mutt. Yeah, that's a good. It's awesome. Awesome.
It's a mutt of a book. Right. So this is Champions #1. It's from October 1975. Prices for this. For a pretty bog standard beat up copy, you're talking £15. However, for a 9.4 CGC, you're looking at £165.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. that's
okay.
Good. Yeah. Written by Tony Isabella with art by Don Peck, ink by Mike Esposito, letters by Dave Hunt, and colors by Petra G, who sounds really cool. Who would have thought? Who came up with this idea? You've got Hercules, Black Widow, Iceman, Angel, and Ghost Rider. I mean, if you know your Marvel history, you know that this book was originally conceived as a bit of a road movie, and it was going to be a road movie featuring Angel and Iceman even, who weren't in the X-Men anymore, and they were going to go like Route 66, traveling and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But the powers that be decided that for it to be a book worthy of Marvel, you had to have some conditions. You had to have at least 5 team members. You had to have a super strong person. So you've got Hercules. You've got to have a woman. So Black Widow. And you've got to have a character who's got their own book. So instead of putting Conan in this, thank God, they went Ghost Rider. I mean, come on. Has there ever been a more mismatched set of characters ever? I mean, just look at the Angel's costume.
Not for this era, for sure.
No wonder you went nuts and became Archangel 25 years later, or whatever how long it was. I mean, just look at it.
I think it's Iron Man. He looks like Iron Man.
I'd go nuts if somebody put me in that. I'd be like, no, thank you.
Yeah, the Angel years later. Apocalypse, thanks, man.
Yeah,
thanks, man. I really appreciate what you did.
Yeah, there is no way this Angel from this book is pulling X-23. No way. Archangel, yeah. This Angel, no. All right, okay. So there is no real rhyme or reason to this book. It kind of starts off, and there's 3 or 4 different events happen to the characters that then coalesce into a whole, like, kind of, we've been thrown together, let's do something about it. But logically, there is absolutely no reason why these characters should be together. But what I loved about it is that in the UK, we never got it. Never got it. We'd see it advertised in the back of Marvel UK comics, or we'd see it advertised on other books that you managed to sneak through. Never in my wildest years did I get a chance to read this the first time around. But the art by Don Heck with the Black Widow always makes me think, wow. I mean, she looks great. She looks better now, better than she does now for me. I'm a big old school Black Widow fan. It's a fun, quick read. You know who the characters are. You don't need a lot of explaining. Although there is a bit of a exposition of why Iceman and Angel are together at the college, and why Natasha's there as well. But as you do. And Johnny Blaze. I mean, you gotta love a book that's got a name with Johnny in it, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's got to be the way. That's the way it works.
It's worth the £200.
Yeah, that helps.
It's crazy. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. For those that are really interested, how much do I love this book? Well, check this out. These are purchases this week. We've got Champions number 3. Check that out. Love that. Yeah. We've got Champions number 4. Check that out. Nice. A nice reader copy of that. Number 5, is that number 5? Check it out. There you go. And of course, because I was saying number 9. Don't ask me why I've missed so many out, but this is the thing. These books, if you like a classic Marvel, this is where it's at. These books, 99 pence each. There you go.
There you go. How can you go wrong?
Well, it's the Champions, for Christ's sake. Although one of them's got a really cool Evel Knievel advert on the back. Look at that. It's a look those. The bike, stunt bike. Wow, how great is that? Cool.
Perfect. Mid-70s Marvel is really where it is awesome.
Yeah.
It is.
Some of it is so awesomely bad, and some of it is so awesomely good.
Well, this is what I was thinking, because I read these, and these are awesomely bad. But it's good kind of bad. And it makes me wonder, because, I mean, this book got cancelled after 17 issues. Miss Marvel got cancelled after 22. Mm-hmm. And yet Spider-Woman lasted how long?
50.
Well into the 50s. Yeah. So you're like, whoa. You think some of these characters were big characters back then. Curious. Champions, Professor. Are you a fan?
Not really. Yeah.
Some of them, bitch.
So I told you they don't get any BEer than this team here. This is you got to think 1975 Marvel, and what was selling in Marvel in 1975. There was a lot of monster books. There was Tomb of Dracula, Werewolf by Night, Frankenstein's monster. A lot of that stuff was getting canceled, and by the middle of 1975 also had giant size issues of everything, giant size Avengers, Fantastic Four, and a couple of months before this, you had giant size X-Men came out, right? And giant size X-Men was great, but guess who got left off the team? You have Angel and you have Iceman, not anywhere. Beast ends up on Avengers, right?
Yep.
So now, this to me, in the Marvel explosion of the 70s, where they had introduced other characters that were kind of powering through their books, like you get Luke Cage, they're introducing Moon Knight shortly thereafter this, Ghost Rider, Blade, you name it. There's all these 70 characters. And this is where I think by 1975, where I think the Marvel universe might have been getting a little overpopulated for some of these creators, and they want to come out with a team book, and they were like, well, you can't make any new people up. You have to use all these all these characters that really aren't doing anything. Black Widow had just gotten jettisoned from the Daredevil book, not even a year before that, right? So she was co-starring in a book, and now she was in limbo. And I'm sure there were some Black Widow fans that didn't want to see that, right?
The thing you've got to say, I mean, there's a parallel. There's a parallel here. Hawkeye is the leader of the West Coast Avengers, who then has a major part to play.
Yeah.
Down the line, Black Widow becomes the chairperson for the Avengers.
Exactly. But and here, what I think some people forget about Hercules was before this, Hercules was really kind of co-starring in Thor's book. He was all over that book for a couple of years, and like just kind of hanging out with Thor, going on side missions, but he was in every issue. So here, you're bringing in your Thor fans, you're bringing in your X-Men fans, you're bringing in your Daredevil fans, and then Ghost Rider, who anybody that's a fan of anything happening in the mid 70s, Son of Satan, all that Defenders. This was really, I would call Defenders a B team. This is really the C team. This is like the sub team of the Defenders, because the Defenders was a team that just was people just thrown together for no reason.
Yeah, unless you count Secret Defenders. Ooh, that was a stinker of a book.
What's Secret?
Secret Defenders had Wolverine, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer. It's like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, this book really, there's no reason for its existence. You have the gods. You had the Venus escaping from Olympia, and they have to send people after her, and then all of a sudden it happens to be on the USC campus or whatever. It's really strange, and it's a really weird idea. I'm surprised it lasted 15 issues. Now, if they put out this book nowadays, it wouldn't have gotten by issue 3.
Yeah, but there are some huge people that work on this book down the line. John Byrne takes this book on for a couple of issues.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, what they were doing in the 70s was really, they were committing, when they came out with the first issue, you're committing to 15 or 20 issues. I think DC still does that. I think DC, when they launch a book, they actually give it time to try to find an audience. Marvel doesn't do that anymore. But this book, really, I mean, people look now, like I'm sure you look back on it as, oh man, Champions was really, that was the where to be back then in 1975. I don't think the people in 1975 thought this book was any good.
Harsh, but fair. Are you going to champion the champions?
Well, I think a couple of things, right? So, unfortunately, this book was 2 years before the "We Are the Champions" song from Queen. So, if it had come out at the same time, it might have helped. Or you can go later on down the line with Bananarama if you want to talk about Venus. Anyways, the Champions, yeah, it is. It's a coincidence, literally a coincidence. All these characters, they were written into a corner with their background and their history thus far in Marvel at this point, and it's like, well, we don't want them to go to waste. It's not like they're characters that at that time, nobody knew who. They didn't know who. They were well known. Who didn't know Ghost Rider during that era?
Hmm.
Hercules was well known. The two of the founding X-Men are part of this book. So they wrote themselves out of a corner when the X-Men turned around and revamped their lineup. The Black Widow, unfortunately, written out of Daredevil. What do you do with her? So she definitely had her stamp on Marvel by this time. So, but this is all coincidence. So the coincidence is, we all happen to be in the same area at the same time for the same reason. And here you are. And then to add to it, you throw in the mythological background of it, right? Because gods in the Marvel universe were a big deal. And definitely on the Norse side, but here you are on the Greek side with Pluto, who is a nemesis of Thor, big time nemesis of Thor. So to bring a team together and to have a villain, this was the one that they chose. And Pluto, or Hades, was definitely not a slouch villain. He definitely gave people a hard time. So, but it makes more sense with Hercules, you would think, right? According to mythology. So you blend all that together, and let's try it. Let's try it. And here you are. And so it's a short run. It's not impossible to find. Yeah, you're going to spend a little more money because the books are older. But the good news is the run didn't last too long, so to put it together is not an impossibility. But I think in this day and age, to collect this, you have to be a fan of one or more of these characters, like for a while. Like I've always liked the original group of X-Men, so that's what drew me into this book. How am I not gonna like Ghost Rider? I'm not that much of a Hercules fan. Always wondered how long it takes for him to put on his shoes, but that's a mystery for another day. But and who doesn't like Black Widow? So I'm like, okay, you know what? Each of those characters individually, I'm cool with it. Here they are together. Why not give it a shot? And that's what I think about the Champions. It's not a book that's going to be top tier. It's not going to be a book that you're going to say, walk down the street like, hey, did you read that? Did you read it? Did you read it? Did you read it? Did you get it? So, but if you have a chance to get it, get it. You might enjoy it. Maybe you won't, but it's classic Marvel. And what can you say? Another team book, but again, if you're cool with Defenders, I love Defenders. I think you will definitely sympathize with the Champions.
There you go.
Those are my thoughts on that.
Perfect. Great thoughts, one and all. I like that. I don't know. I like the Black Widow. I like Ghost Rider. I wasn't seeing a lot of either of those characters when I was a kid, so for me, this is right up my street. This is some of the reasons why I like comic books like this.
It definitely has its place. It's just for me, when you get if you were buying comics in 1975 and you went to the store and got your pull list. I know we didn't have direct sales at that time, but if you got your pull list and you're sitting there, the Champions would go to the bottom of the pile. It just would.
I'm not so sure. It's one of those. It's so bad, it's good things to me.
Honestly, of all the books that we reviewed today, I mean, I've seen countless times Infinity Inc. almost in complete runs for 50 cents or less. Whoa. So what I said earlier is kind of true, where you can buy one and get the rest free. Champions wasn't always like that. Maybe the first issue was definitely the one where the money comes in more, but the rest of the run, I've seen them thrown around in 50-cent dollar bins at conventions, and people walk on by.
Why I think that is I think it's the reason I had, because I was very intimidated by it, is I think Crisis killed a lot of the back issue market, because with all those pre-books like Infinity Inc. or Justice Society Earth 2 stuff, there's just so much there. No one wants to be bothered with it.
And it's got no relevance in what you're reading currently. So
right.
That's a good shout. That is a good shout.
Could we say the same about Champions now?
Yeah, you could. I mean, the name obviously has been used recently for a whole new team. So, Marvel have some faith in the name. I'm not sure if to believe it or not, but still, hey ho, let's find out on that book. But I think we've done quite well with those three picks. I think they pretty much nailed the whole kind of subgenre of B teams, West Coast Avengers. You could argue aren't the B team. You could argue they're the A team. You've got Infinity Inc., which you could argue isn't the B team. It's a continuation of the same team. And you've got the Champions, which is just an absolute mud of a book. It's definitely a C book. That's totally fine. And that's kind of, I think what we're trying to say is there's lots of different books out there for lots of different readers.
Mhm.
It doesn't just stop with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. There are a whole raft of other things. And you know what? Give it a try. If they're only 50 cents, 99 pence a pop, who you hurting? Yeah.
Some of my favorite books are the supporting characters. So
you picked that dodgy Avengers book last time, a few episodes
absolutely.
back.
Oh yeah.
That's fine on that one. All right, guys, that's it for the show. I want to say thank you very much to the Professor and for the 13th Crusader. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed hanging out with you yet again.
Let's do it again soon.
Let's do it again soon. What we've got to remember is don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, which includes Professor.
No Prize Podcast.
Excellent. Where you talk also about a recent show that
you watch the latest episode dropping this week. We talked the first 2 episodes of WandaVision.
There you go. Cool. Of course, the Definitive Crusade will be back in a week's time, talking about everything that's future state. And of course, you've got Crisis and Toyverse as well to check out. All right. Okay. All I've got to say now is this is Join the Machine Hughes saying adios.